Both you and your child are not lovely. Get out of this house right now.
What? This house is. I stopped mid-sentence. Okay. I started packing my things. My husband was flustered as he watched us.
Wait. You don't have to leave.
But your dear mother told me to leave. I have to obey, right?
Jimmy, don't bother with that woman. Come over here and have some cake.
My mother-in-law had a triumphant look on her face. I decided to knock her down a few pegs and went back to my parents' house with my daughter. My name is Megan, a 34-year-old office worker. I got married to a man named Jimmy 2 years ago. Jimmy and I met through a popular dating app, and after a year of dating, we became a married couple. Although Jimmy was unreliable sometimes, he was a very kind and thoughtful man. When we were dating, he would look up restaurants I wanted to try and plan our dates in advance. Even after we got married, when I was tired, he washed the dishes for me or brought home my favorite dessert. About a year into our marriage, we welcomed a beautiful daughter into our lives. My husband was actively involved in parenting, and I felt fortunate to have met such a wonderful husband. However, as expected, he's not perfect in every way. My husband does have some faults. Among them, the most significant fault is that he's a mama's boy. The first time I suspected that my husband might be a mama's boy was when it came to the taste of food. How is it? Delicious?
It's alright, but I think my mom's was a bit richer.
Wait, your mother? I was puzzled why suddenly his mother's name came up. But upon further conversation, it turned out he considered his mother's cooking to be the best and wanted me to replicate that taste as much as possible. Since my mother-in-law's cooking seems to be generally rich in flavor, I've been trying to make dishes a bit richer as per my husband's request. Even when we go on trips, he always says, "What souvenir should we get for Mom?" He has a father too, so it's normal to think about what to get for parents, but my husband always starts with "for Mom." I suppose if I look at it from the perspective of valuing one's mother, it's a good thing. And I think there are quite a few men who could be considered mama's boys. However, I would later come to realize that my husband's attachment to his mother went beyond what I had expected.
I'm thinking of living with my mom.
Wait, why all of a sudden?
Looks like my mom and dad are getting a divorce.
What? Is that true?
Apparently, it's because of my dad's affair.
I can't believe it. My father-in-law was a kind person, but you can't judge people by appearances.
It's really cruel to leave my mom alone, and besides, if we live together, she can help take care of our daughter.
That does make sense. I'm currently on maternity leave, but with my mother-in-law's support, I might be able to return to work sooner. But I felt a bit uneasy about it. Does my mother-in-law really like me? Will we get along living together? I shared my honest feelings with my husband. Then my husband said,
"Don't worry, it'll be fine. My mom has been praising you."
I was surprised that my mother-in-law had been praising me. That fact made me happy, and I started thinking that we might get along well even living together. However, I soon realized that my thinking was too optimistic. My mother-in-law moved into the apartment where we were living, but she suddenly started to be rude to me.
It kinda annoys me that you're living in such a nice apartment.
Huh?
Don't you ever forget that it's thanks to my son that you have your current lifestyle.
I didn't understand why she was shouting at me. Well, My husband does put effort into his work and household chores, so I guess I'm grateful in a way. Her argument isn't entirely wrong, so I just quietly replied, yes. I'll keep that in mind.
Humph. It's good to be obedient.
After that, my mother-in-law would yell at me whenever there was something she didn't like.
You're supposed to have ketchup with fried eggs. Why is there mayonnaise here? The bath water is too lukewarm. Set it hotter. And why isn't there any ice cream after the bath? Make sure it's stocked.
Seriously, do it all yourself. And the reasons for getting angry are so ridiculous. Despite being at home all day, my mother-in-law hardly does any housework. I had hoped she would be more cooperative in taking care of our 1-year-old daughter, but she only helps when she feels like it and stops as soon as she gets bored. And what I came to realize for the first time after living together was that my mother-in-law's excessive doting on her son was worse than my husband's mama's boy tendencies.
Jimmy, how was work today?
It was really tough. My boss was a bit tense because it was busy, so I had to be careful.
Oh my. That's unacceptable. Maybe I should protest against workplace harassment.
Huh? Over something like that?
It's okay, Mom. We have to have a big heart and forgive.
My goodness. What a kind-hearted boy you are. You're like an angel.
Calling a man in his 30s an angel.
Ha, thanks Mom. But if I can't forgive anymore, I'll need your backup, okay?
Of course.
I feel sorry for his boss. Being protested against for harassment just based on my husband's mood swings. I quickly regretted moving in with my mother-in-law. Being stuck at home with someone like her was driving me crazy. That's why I decided to put my daughter into daycare and return to work. My mother-in-law got angry, saying,
Why do you have to work too?
But when I said, you can spend the day alone at home, you know? She seemed to find some advantages in it.
Well, don't neglect the housework.
She didn't get any angrier. Phew, what a hassle she is. You never know what will set her off. After I started working and had less contact with my mother-in-law, my stress level decreased a bit. But around a year after we started living together, another problem arose. It happened to be our daughter's 2nd birthday that day. We prepared cake, presents, and everything to celebrate, and we had a family birthday party for our daughter. However, our daughter had recently entered the terrible twos phase. It was perhaps the peak of it on her birthday.
Look. It's a present. Open it up.
My mother-in-law handed the gift to my daughter.
No.
But my daughter knocked it away. My mother-in-law was surprised, but she managed to hold herself back at that moment. Then, thinking that maybe the cake would work if the present didn't, my mother-in-law scooped up a bite of cake with a fork and tried to feed it to my daughter.
Here you go. It's your favorite chocolate cake.
No, I don't want it.
But my daughter pushed it away with her hand once again. Then, a bit of cream flipped and landed on my mother-in-law's forehead. That triggered her, who has a short temper, and she exploded in anger at my 2-year-old daughter.
Will you cut it out? You're getting too cocky just because I'm being nice.
My daughter burst into tears at the sudden outburst. What are you doing? She's scared. I hurriedly pulled my daughter close to protect her.
Shut up. She's such an unlovable grandchild.
Then you're an immature grandmother.
What did you say?
Normally, adults don't use such words on a 2-year-old.
Shut up. You're such an insolent daughter-in-law. Can't you control that mouth of yours?
As we argued, my husband jumped in.
Cut it out. Don't insult Mom.
What? Are you taking your mother's side in this situation? Normally, you should take your own daughter's side, shouldn't you?
You can make as many children as you want. But there's only one mom in this world.
That's despicable. You're saying it as if it's some kind of profound quote, but it's garbage.
Hey. Stop talking bad about Jimmy. You and your child are not lovable. Get out of this house right now.
What? This house is. I stopped mid-sentence. Okay. I started packing my things. My husband was flustered as he watched us.
Wait. You don't have to leave.
But your dear mother told me to leave. I have to obey, right?
Jimmy, don't bother with that woman. Come over here and have some cake.
My mother-in-law had a triumphant look on her face. I decided to knock her down a few pegs and went back to my parents' house with my daughter. After that, my husband called me many times, but I ignored them. I proceeded with various preparations and sent the divorce papers to him. It seemed my husband also filled them out and sent them back to me. I promptly submitted them to the city hall. Then, I called my ex-husband.
Hello.
I submitted the divorce papers, so thanks for filling them out.
Ah, so it's okay, it's fine for me and Mom to keep living in this house, right? Since you are the one who decided to leave here with our daughter.
Fine by me, as long as you pay the rent properly.
Ha, well, of course I will. This apartment is rented under your name, so I was a bit worried when you moved out the other day. But if I think about it calmly, all I need to do is change the name on the lease, right? Thanks for providing a comfortable living space for me and Mom.
That's good to hear.
By the way, how much is the rent here?
All right then. How about $1,500 for the rent?
Ha! What are you talking about? Stop joking and tell me the actual rent price.
I'm not kidding. Because I'm the landlord.
Ha!
We talked about this when we got married, didn't we? I made quite a bit of money from stocks in the past, and I used that to buy that apartment. You just assumed it was a rental property. My ex-husband seemed to be completely stunned and fell silent. If $1,500 for the rent is too much for you, I'll put it up for sale properly. That apartment will sell quickly.
Wait. If you do that, where will my mom and I live?
I don't know. Just leave quickly. Otherwise, I'll report it to the management company. With that, I hung up the phone. Then I blocked my ex-husband's number. Afterwards, I demanded child support payments from my ex-husband through a lawyer. According to the lawyer, my ex-husband lost so much weight. Well, it must be mentally and financially tough to support both my ex-mother-in-law and pay child support. By the way, apparently my ex-mother-in-law also attended the discussions, and both my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were just blaming each other, saying, "It's your fault," non-stop. It's surprising how quickly the relationship between such a closely knit parent and child can fall apart when money and a lavish lifestyle are lost. Or rather, Perhaps they were just only superficially connected. Well, it doesn't really matter to me anymore. On the other hand, the apartment sold for unexpectedly high, so I've saved all of it for my daughter's upbringing. Right now, I'm living with my parents, relying on them, and working hard. I want to be in a relationship again at some point, but right now, my top priority is earning as much as I can for my precious daughter. Oh, but in the future, I'll make sure not to become too overbearing or excessively indulgent with my daughter, taking my ex-mother-in-law as a cautionary example. I am Rachel, 32 years old. I am an ordinary housewife with a husband who is 3 years older than me and a son in daycare. Though I am a housewife, I also work hard at my job, having a very busy daily life. One day, there was a welcome party for new employees at my company, and I attended as well. On the way back from the party, I was suddenly stopped by a police officer. I had been obeying the speed limit and traffic lights, so I was puzzled as to why I was being stopped. However, I ended up being subjected to an outrageous false accusation by an extremely rude and unreasonable police officer. Normally, I don't usually attend company drinking parties. There are various reasons for this, but the fact that I still have a small child and the fact that I can't even handle a drop of alcohol are major factors. Consuming alcohol triggers such a strong physical reaction in me that it causes me considerable discomfort. However, this time it was the welcome party for new employees, and due to my position as a section chief, I felt obligated to attend. Furthermore, although it was originally planned for one of my subordinates to organize the event, since I'm always sober throughout these events due to my inability to drink alcohol, I volunteered to take on the role of organizer. I want my subordinates to enjoy drinking occasionally at such gatherings. Also, among my peers, there's a woman named Nicola who has an incredibly low alcohol tolerance but loves drinking and has the troublesome kinds of being a laughing and crying drunk. It has become somewhat of my responsibility as a colleague and friend to ensure she gets home safely. So once again, I refrained from drinking any alcohol this time. After paying the bill, I took my friend away from the group of people outside the store who were gathering for an after party and got the car keys, then sat in the driver's seat of my friend's car. She always anticipates this situation, so she has daily insurance coverage just in case. Even if I were to cause an accident, everything would be okay, as she's fully prepared. Driving carefully in my friend's car, especially since it's a luxury vehicle, I headed towards my friend's house. While waiting at a traffic light, I witnessed a certain scene. Several police officers were surrounding a man lying on the ground in front of a pub, trying to communicate with him. Every company seems to be having welcome parties at this time of year, huh? Really, hats off to them. As I muttered those words, I glanced at my friend who was slumping in the passenger seat, only to notice a young police officer staring at us.
Ma'am, please pull over.
The moment I catched his eye, he called out to us. Since my friend wanted to feel the wind, I had the window open, so I could hear the police officer's voice clearly. I didn't have any memory of doing anything wrong, but I figured that enforcement against drunk driving must be stricter at this time of year. As it turned out, that was indeed the case. A young male officer approached us with a drawn-out tone.
As part of the campaign against drunk driving this month, I had to stop and talk to you.
Given that my friend in the passenger seat seemed off, he decided to talk to us. Additionally, as part of the campaign against drunk driving, the officer mentioned conducting an alcohol test just to be sure. This was all expected, and since I hadn't consumed a drop of alcohol, I agreed to the test. However, at this point, an unexpected event occurred.
Yeah, you there. Blow into this device.
The young officer who had looked at my test result with a puzzled expression suddenly turned to my friend and told her to blow into the breathalyzer. My friend wasn't the one driving, and it was obvious that she was drunk. There was no reason for her to be tested, yet I couldn't understand why the officer insisted on it. Moreover, this was the first time I had experienced something like this, so I could only watch in astonishment as the young officer interacted with my friend. Without understanding the situation, my friend, who was completely out of focus, obediently blew into the device, resulting in a reading of over 0.25 milligrams on the breathalyzer, as expected. Upon seeing the result, the officer looked at me with a smirk and said,
Ah, this is drunk driving. Your license will be suspended. Understand? Suspension.
The officer insisted that the breathalyzer result of my friend, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was mine and accused me of drunk driving. Of course I couldn't accept such an outrageous accusation and asserted that I hadn't been drinking. However, the young officer raised the corner of his eye and said,
You're being noisy. If you refuse to follow police instructions, I'll arrest you for obstructing official duties on the spot.
He threatened me. Thinking that such behavior shouldn't be tolerated, I protested vehemently. And then, as the young officer and I were futilely arguing about whether I had been drinking or not, someone who seemed to be the young officer's superior arrived, perhaps sensing that something was amiss.
What's going on here?
Upon hearing the supervisor's words, the young officer's expression got soured, and he reported that I was lying about not drinking and driving. The supervisor officer stared at my face intently and furrowed his brow. It was obvious. I hadn't been drinking, and, from my appearance, it was clear that I was sober. Indeed, the initial test result showed almost 0 milligrams. However, since the supervisor officer didn't witness the entire situation, he was at a loss for how to proceed and requested another test to be conducted in front of him. Just when I thought I would finally be released, the young officer, feeling that things weren't going his way, unbelievably claimed that my friend was carrying suspicious drugs. The reason for my friend's strange behavior, according to the young officer, wasn't due to intoxication but rather hallucinogenic effects. Not stopping there, he accused me of intending to harm my friend, casting unwarranted suspicion, and the situation spiraled out of control into a completely unexpected direction. Since my friend wouldn't do anything like that, and there was no evidence to support such a sudden accusation, it was painfully obvious that the young officer was just fabricating a lie out of thin air. However, in order to be thorough, the supervisor officer requested to inspect both my belongings and the inside of the car. Reluctantly, I agreed to undergo the inspection of my belongings. Then, the young officer discovered a bag containing a mysterious white powder peeking out from the side compartment of the car. The moment he saw it, he had a triumphant expression on his face.
This is definitely drugs.
He exclaimed excitedly. Even the supervisor officer was pondering the situation. Honestly, since it belonged to my friend, I had no idea what it was, and she was still drunk, looking drowsy that her head was niddle-noddle. Moreover, because my friend was the owner of the car, without her permission, the police couldn't conduct an internal search. We were given the option to accompany the officers to the police station or, if we refused, they would request a search warrant. Furthermore, as the young officer loudly declared, "It's drugs," other officers who were dealing with a drunken man lying by the roadside also gathered, making the situation even more chaotic. Caught in a situation where nothing made sense anymore, the young officer began to make a fuss about arresting us on the spot. Feeling like things were getting out of control, All right then. Shall we go to the police station? I responded more calmly than I thought. Making a scene here won't solve anything, and I have a lot to say about the false accusation of drunk driving earlier. My friend was also being framed as a criminal, so I couldn't stay silent. Upon hearing this, the young officer looked surprised.
Ha!
He seemed to prefer arresting us on the spot, but given the circumstances, we were instructed by the supervisor officer to go to the police station for further examination and to provide detailed statements. As soon as we arrived at the police station, I underwent another alcohol test in the presence of many officers to prove my innocence. As expected, no alcohol was detected in my system, and it was concluded that I hadn't been driving under the influence. The young officer who had accused me was scolded by his supervisor for his behavior. As I sighed in relief, the young officer began to make excuses, such as the machine was broken or I didn't blow into the device correctly. In the end, he resorted to fabricating lies, such as accusing me of attempting to steal belongings from my intoxicated friend. The other officers seemed to understand that these were lies, but the young officer was too agitated and uncontrollable. We left the pub at 9:30 p.m., and it's already past 10 p.m. I told my husband that I would be home by 11 p.m., but it seems impossible now, and I'm starting to get frustrated. My friend was getting sober, noticing something's wrong, and was checking what's happening. We are innocent. Please apologize. I demanded an apology from the angry young officer.
Are you threatening me?
But he became defensive. At that moment, the anger I had been holding back surged over me. Enough is enough. My loud voice echoed through the police station, bringing a momentary silence. My friend also looked up in surprise at the sound of my voice. I rarely raise my voice like that, so it must have been startling for them. Even when my subordinates make big mistakes, I've never shouted like this before. But right now, there's no time for such thoughts. I was falsely accused of drunk driving and nearly arrested, and my friend was even suspected of using suspicious drugs, leading to the situation where we had to come to the police station late at night. It's all because of that unreasonable young officer who does nothing but lie. I can't stand the fact that someone like him abuses the power of the state as a police officer and acts so arrogantly. I strongly felt that he must be held accountable. Phew, it seems you're prepared. I won't hold back anymore. I stood in front of the young officer and asked, "What's your intention in trying to make a false charge against us?" He probably thought that since we're just two women and one of us was drunk, he could easily get away with making things up, right? But that's not going to happen. Then, the young police officer, perhaps defiant, responded boldly.
I simply conducted the test as part of the Drunk Driving Prevention Month. The fact is, there were suspicious drugs. You're the one who caused a scene, so why should I be blamed for this?
His resolute attitude caught me off guard. But I couldn't let myself be overpowered here, so I raised my voice just as much. Then why did you test my friend and lie that I was drinking after you realized I wasn't driving under the influence? Can you explain that thoroughly? My words caused a stir around us. The young officer, not willing to back down.
Do you have any proof that I lied?
He still continued denying everything. As I pondered how to recreate the situation,
Our car has a dashcam that also records the interior. Could you check that, please?
Nicola hesitantly spoke up. It turns out, she had invested in a high-quality dashcam for the luxury car. She chose such a product not only for security but also to capture any incidents that might occur inside the car. She believed this could serve as evidence. My friend mentioned that she doesn't remember the incident because she was too intoxicated at the time, but she believed me and trusted that I wouldn't lie. She also said she would explain about the car interior inspection and the drugs in question. Although she was intoxicated until a while ago, this situation seemed to have sobered her up to some extent. The situation suddenly shifted, with the officers bustling around for inspections and whatnot. Then, the young officer exclaimed,
Such heinous criminals should be arrested on the spot.
surely, even if he found himself in a disadvantageous situation, he must have felt he couldn't back down anymore. In response, I protested once again. Please tell me the reason for the arrest. What are the charges? Upon hearing that, the young officer stumbled over his words and fell silent. There wasn't a single reason they could arrest us. In such a situation, the only option left might be an on-the-spot arrest, but we weren't causing any trouble, and we were complying with the voluntary inspection. The other officers, who were beginning to realize that the young officer was lying, were trying to calm him down.
We need to confirm the facts first.
However, they were sending looks of either disbelief or coldness. The young officer started trembling and eventually burst into tears at that. Afterward, we underwent questioning and inspections at the police station for a while, and before we knew it, about an hour had passed. Thanks to my friend's cooperation, things proceeded smoothly. Regarding the white powder, it's just allergy medicine for hay fever.
See, it's pollen season, right? I've always had severe allergic rhinitis, so I always carry it in my car or bag.
My friend explained it that way. The name of the medicine's ingredients was printed small at the bottom of the bag, and just to be sure, we had it tested, but as expected, it came back negative. Since there was nothing suspicious found during the car search, and I was the one driving, we were able to completely prove our innocence. Regarding this, I received an apology from his supervisor.
I sincerely apologize for the significant inconvenience caused on this occasion. It's late today, so I'll visit with the director tomorrow to offer our apologies once again.
However, the young officer still refuses to admit his wrongdoing and insists.
This must be some kind of mistake. There must be some oversight.
I couldn't stand it any longer. If you insist on that, then let's go to court. Insulting me, threatening me, negligence of duty, and fabricating information. Let's leave it to the law to decide which side is right, as befits a nation governed by the rule of law. With that, even the young officer couldn't say anything more. Just when I thought we were finally free, it was almost midnight, and as I exchanged glances with my friend, I let out a deep sigh. While my friend hadn't completely sobered up yet, I was helping them back to the car when that young officer came running after us and called out. I turned around, thinking he had more complaints, but to my surprise, his face had turned pale.
I heard from those who interviewed you. Is your husband a lawyer?
I was wondering what he was going to say, and then he came out with something like that. Yes, that's right. I'll tell my husband everything about this incident, and we will definitely sue you. He then grabbed my clothes and pleaded with me.
I won't do it anymore. Actually, there's a personal quota I need to meet, so I had no choice but to do such things.
The young officer then confessed the real reason for his actions. It's infuriating to think that we were detained for nearly 2 hours for such a ridiculous reason. I couldn't care less about your quota. What's more concerning is the fact that the police are causing trouble for innocent civilians and even fabricating charges. What's going on here? I raised my voice and pushed away the young officer's hand. I thought I might be accused of obstructing official duties, but given the circumstances, the young officer, on the verge of tears, remained silent and looked down. Ignoring the young officer, we turned on our heels and drove away. Afterward, senior officials from the police station came to apologize to us, but I made it clear that my intention to pursue legal action against that young officer hadn't changed. I don't really want to say it, but the police tend to be lenient with disciplinary actions against their own, so I didn't want them to settle for just a slap on the wrist. So, I decided to file a civil lawsuit with the help of a lawyer acquaintance of my husband. While it's possible to file an administrative lawsuit, there's a higher chance of it being dismissed, so we were advised that a civil lawsuit would have better prospects for success. After all, the problem lies with that young police officer individually. I was able to sue that young police officer for insult and intimidation against me, and successfully claim compensation. Although disciplinary action was taken in this case, the young police officer resigned voluntarily. As for me, I hadn't mentioned this matter to anyone outside my family.
Rachel stood up to the police and it was amazing.
But my friend, Nicola, made a big deal out of it and the story became the talk of the office. It seems that until now, I was perceived as an unapproachable, career-driven female manager, but thanks to this incident, I've noticed an increase in people approaching me, and now I have a good relationship with many of my subordinates. Furthermore, I've succeeded in securing major deals and have been promoted. Thanks to that, I was able to take a long vacation, so I'm planning a long-awaited trip to Italy with my family. I've had enough of such false accusations, but I intend to continue living true to myself from now on. Well then, everyone, take care.